The video you are about to watch is how I created my Scrapguards and Derelict Rustwalkers from the free online scenario Shattered Souls on Renegade Game Studios website for Heroscape. That was the March 2025 scenario, and this video came at the request of Ryan from Tales of Valhalla, and I wanted to just apologize right now for its broken and incoherent nature, because as I say several times throughout the video, it is taken during different steps of a project that I was ready to have completed. Power outages, blizzards, delayed mail, I was done. So here you go, hopefully you can make sense of what I do. We are going to make some Heroscape Scenario 7 Shattered Souls, Scrapguards, and Rustwalkers. I was requested by Tales of Valhalla to post a video on my process, so I'm going to do that, so you can see, replicate, or improve my way of doing it and make your own. Since it is an official scenario with official army cards, I want figures to represent them. And like Samuel Brown, the figures on those army cards are never actually produced. So normally I say no customs, no 3D prints and all that, but these are official army cards, and I want quote-unquote official figures. So I got another game by Milton Bradley, which is what Heroscape started as, and figures, which the Gladiatrons were originally supposed to be for, was an expansion of Battleball. I bought a damaged copy, so I'm not destroying a copy of the game that's full and ready to be played. I got 16 of these things, so I can do a common clash, and we're just going to take these. And the first step that I go through is priming them, and I have a rattle can of Citadel White Scar. So we're going to prime these up. I also have some 3D printed Gladiatrons coming, so I can make more that are more accurate to the silhouette on the army card. But I did not want to destroy official Gladiatrons. So, again, breaking my own rules just a little. So, let's go through these. Alright, step 1, as with priming, find a well-ventilated area. Not much more well-ventilated than the outside world. So if it's not too humid, not too cold, not too hot, we can get ready to blast these dudes with some primer. You want to just do short bursts with some distance on the miniature so that you don't just absolutely soak them in primer. But you can do a little better than I can with one hand. So since these are going to be pretty coated in other paint and rust effects and stuff, just a coat of primer across the mini will do. And like I said, you can either repaint other miniatures or build or create your own. And this is step 1 of my process. After applying the green stuff how you like and customizing your figures, you can just let it set for 24 hours before priming another quick layer over that. I like to add a little drip of super glue on each of these strings just to give it a little more stability. So when they're all ready to be painted, they're as stable as I can make them. After the primer has had some time to dry, step 2 of my process involves green stuff, as it is called. It's just this little epoxy stick. I think it's epoxy, I don't know. I just wanted to sound like I knew what it was. It's this blue and yellow stuff that when smashed together, pinched, rolled up, becomes green, and then you can mold it, put it on the miniature, and then it hardens, and you can prime and paint it as well. This is going to make the rust vines or whatever is all over the picture of the army card and give us a neat effect. I'm also going to put some on the faces of some of these guys where they have more of a human face and just cover that up with a little bit of stuff, like this guy here, very human face. We're just going to green stuff over that, give it a smooth surface to make him look more like a pure robot or Soulborg in the Heroscape world. Alright, got a little bit of the green stuff mixed. While it's still malleable, we're going to apply some to these Scrapguards here and make some dangling rust parts. We'll also get some on the Derelict Rustwalkers. Now, the Rustwalkers were already in progress before I started this. One of them is already completely done. This is the one that I call Righty, because it's on the right side of the silhouette if you're looking at it on the Army card. For him, you will need a Admiral EJ-1M and a Major X17. EJ-1M is going to be his left arms, and Major X17's sword arm is going to be his right. So I will show off the others once they're all done, but there's with the green stuff effects, you got kind of those dangly lines and everything. Look like wires or gooey rust or something. This guy is never going to see a battlefield again, probably. And it's just a matter of pinching off a piece of the green stuff, rolling it, and then applying it as you like how it looks on your figure. And this video is going to be like all over the place and out of order in different steps. I should organize it, but I'm at various stages of this process with everything. But after the green stuff that was applied to these Battleball figures got to set for 24 hours, I just rattle can and hit them with another quick layer of primer, trying not to blast them everywhere. And this is just some basement room that I paint in, so don't worry about me hitting primer all over my wall or whatever is behind it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, there's that. I'll just not record every little shot of primer on these guys. But these also, you may think, look a little sloppy, which is just fine, because they're going to be Scrapguard guys made of rust and junk anyway. Plus, they are also only temporary until I get the Gladiatrons that I wanted to prime up and everything. They'll look fine once they're painted up. This dude was supposed to have like a junk morning star or something. I just made some really poor sculpted green stuff and stuck it on an actual Squirrel Girl's leg from Marvel Crisis Protocol because I had no need for her leg. So now it's a weapon for Heroscape. But fear not, Squirrel Girl fans, for I had an extra Squirrel Girl. So, nothing destroyed that I needed. And, even though these were in various stages of completion, so I didn't get time to prep a tutorial video, I'm just kind of piecing it together as I do the project now, I just wanted to say you'll need plastic clippers, preferably better than these pieces of junk, which I accidentally coated in primer somehow when I first started painting. Don't know how I did that, but it looks terrible. Anyway, you will need to cut off Deathwalker 9000's right arm and left arm. His body is fine. And the 8000 is already done, so I can't really show you what I did to him until you see the completed version, but his right arm his right leg from the knee down goes away, and his left arm gets replaced with the left arm of Deathwalker 9000. It'll make sense when it's done. His right arm stays the same. But this is the stage that he is currently in. Before I continued, I just wanted to point that out, so you can get prepped and proof of the Squirrel Girl. Well, continuing on with the process, as I stated, I did not want to cut up an official figure, so I had a 3D printed one for this non-official figure that I'm making anyway. Well, I guess official army card, no official miniature for it. But I'm going to have to cut off his arm here. The 3D print behaves a lot differently cutting it with the plastic cutters than the actual miniatures. So, a little bit of shattering rather than cutting. But let's continue. And it's on. Look how tiny his arm looks compared to the Deathwalker 9000 chassis. Well, I'll finish putting up some green stuff, make a couple of more weird strings or vines or whatever, and call him done before we paint him. Unrelated to most of what's been happening, but I got the Gladiatrons that I'm going to paint up a lot better than the Battleball figures for the squad. I just wanted to get the project done. So this is where I currently sit. A bunch of unpainted Gladiatrons and a bunch of half-done sloppy Battleball guys. And I'm going to cut to these things when they are finished, but the process that I'm using on these is the same as I'm going to be using on the bigger figure. So I'll just skip to when I'm done with these and then go through that with the Deathwalker 9000 Derelict Rustwalker. And here are the Scrapguards. This is just a quick and sloppy assembly of them because they are supposed to look like trash after all. So I just mimicked that in my paint job. I'll go over what I did step by step with the next Derelict Rustwalker. Alright, now that the assembly of the figure is done, the green stuff has been able to set after 24 hours, as has the primer and stuff. I will now go over the colors that I use to give the rust effect. You don't have to use everything I use, but at least it'll give you an idea of where to start. So let's dive in with some lineup of paints. First, for the legs, usually from the thigh area down, I will do a contrast wildwood from Citadel, just to get a little bit of darkness near the bottom of the figure. I also use the contrast wildwood to paint the rust strings or vines or whatever. It stands out pretty well when the miniature is all done. At random spots on the body, I will put contrast Nazdrag yellow, and that'll just be splotched around in different spots. To fill in most of the other space on the miniature where the yellow and the wildwood are not at, I will do contrast Dark Oath Flesh from Citadel. Now here's the figure after those 3 layers have been applied. And as with anything that involves a lot of steps like this, trust the process. This looks bad now, but in the end it should be a satisfying result. If not, I really screwed this up, but I don't think that I did, because this is what the other ones have looked like as well. But here's the darker layer I was talking about, then the random brown and yellow spots. Now you can let this dry if you'd like, otherwise you can get right into the next step, which is a layer over the whole miniature of the Citadel Color Technical Paint Typhus Corrosion. That will give it a texture and a nice mix and blend of all these colors, and it'll start to look like weathered metal and rusty metal already before the final step, before touch-ups and highlights and things. Now for this one, I opted with the do not let the contrast paints dry before I started to coat him in the Typhus Corrosion. I also tried to avoid the vines or whatever that I made, so they don't get the same effect as the chassis or the body, so they just look like extra hang-off things and stuff. I am going to let this dry before, or mostly dry, before the next phase, which is a dry brush layer of Citadel Dry Ryza Rust. That will blend in really nice with this Typhus Corrosion and the other colors underneath it, and it'll finish off the effect. And then we can add our highlights and other colors and other details to make this thing look as table ready as we are going to get it. A side note, because some people do like to know this information, and you can tell how horribly I treat my brushes, I am using a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2 to get all this on there. And then I am going to drop my other brush on the floor. But here is the brush that I'm going to use for the dry brush. It's a Siegfried R5. Came in a Kickstarter of brushes where I have a few. So I don't think, like Wolf Bristle, I don't think Siegfried is the actual name brand, but there's a starting point. So these dry brushes were the Techlon Tiger dry brushes. Man, how many more names can I mispronounce? The paints all have stupid names. Instead of like red, blue, green, it's like Warlock's leaking blisters and stuff. Like, just call it yellow or something. Anyway, let's dry brush and finish this guy off. I'm not going to go over exactly how you want to dry brush or whatever, but I just preparing my brush for the miniature on my trash box over here. How much orange, how little orange, or whatever you want to do is going to be up to you, but just make sure that you get it to where you're not just painting over everything with orange. Siegfried is not the name of the brush, it's just, the name of that brush, but I switched to an R3 because the Siegfried, I hate paint fingers being in videos, gross. The other video is the other brush was too big for the paint pot. But here is the effect when it's all dried up before touch-ups and highlights and stuff. looks adequately rusty to me. So now we will go into the next phase that I enjoy doing, which is the final touches. So for these, I like to get the original figures and base the weapon colors, like what would be silver or brighter metal on the regular mini. I'm actually going to use this Hash Hut Copper, which is another Citadel color, and anything that was a brighter metal I'm going to do that copper on to give it also a just degraded metal look. So we'll get Admiral EJ-1M, we'll get Major X17, and the Deathwalker 9000, and we'll get those silver parts that proper copper. Now, if at this point in the video you're thinking to yourself, this looks pretty lame or pretty bad, it is meant to look this bad, in my opinion, because original Heroscape paint jobs weren't that great to begin with, and these things are literally meant to be living husks of pretty much trash. And if my painting skills are being in question because of this mess, I painted this, and I painted this Hulkbuster, this Sentinel, and this Juggernaut. So when I apply myself, I am capable of painting with skill. These are just kind of sloppy on purpose. Hulk smash. So hopefully it doesn't deter you from creating your own. I just wanted to give some tips on how I do it so you can go about recreating some of my looks. I'll just get a group shot of everything when it's all done so you can be a judge of how the final product looks, not just this almost complete process. And I wasn't trying to brag there. I don't think that I'm what they would call golden demon level colors or painting skills. There are people in the painting community that far exceed me. I just wanted to show that I'm capable of more than just this splotchy randomness. So first, we got a sword in Major X17's hand that we have here. It's pretty close to what the final color is that we're going to be, but nothing really else on his arm needs that. We got EJ-1M has more silver arms than he does the body of the Deathwalker, which only has silver in this pod thing that I used to think was its face, but since you draw a line of sight from this thing, that's the eye. Now it does have an Utgar symbol on there that I am not that great at freehanding, but we can recreate it a little bit on this junk part. So it looks like we're going to have to touch up the sword and the arms here. Now for the guard, the handle, and the pommel of the sword, we are going to do a base of lead belcher and then a wash of that of noble skin on that base to give it a darker metal, because the original sword is black, but we want something that looks older. I'm sorry, a grip, not a handle, because that is the entirety of the hilt with the guard, the grip, and the pommel. Alright, the sword is done and drying. The light is reflecting off of that. That's not a mist spot, that is actually covered. But the sword is drying, so now we will move on to the beak, or pod, or the dumb part of the Deathwalker 9000. And for the parts of him that were red, we are going to use a little mayhem red on top of it, and then we'll wash that in the end wash over the whole miniature to give that some aged look as well. But in addition to the Hash Hut Copper, some mayhem red for the red accents on the figure. For the free-handed logos, I'm going to use a Winsor Newton Series 7 00, and I'm going to freehand some stuff. Alright, and as that's drying, we've got our Utgar Valkyrie crest symbol and the 9000 on the shoulder. That should fade in pretty nicely when it dries to stick with the rusty exterior. Now this is just a touch I've been adding to my Scrapguards and Derelict Rustwalkers, as I am giving their line of sight, where they draw a line of sight from, I'm doing Caliban green. So I'm going to make the eye here green. Alright, we got the arms with the Hash Hut Copper, so we're going to use the Mayhem Red on the pads and the wrist guards. And then we are going to match the lead belcher and noble skin wash on the guns. Alright, and now as he is drying, prepare the final step, which is the wash of the miniature. I usually use this one on this recipe for the rust, the flesh wash from Army Painter in the quick shade, but you could also use Citadel's Reichland flesh shade, or if you want, use classic Nuln oil from Citadel. So let's wash him up and get him based on a new base, because I accidentally primed the other one. So he's almost done. And here is the end result. Looks rusty, looks covered in mud, looks dirty, beaten up, used, and exactly how I want him to look.